Hey, 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 everyone. This is your weekly dose of A Star with Abby Rolling. And today I am joined with Sterling Banks, an independent singer, songwriter, and rapper from right here in the Midwest. Her newest album, Disassembly, is out right now for your listening purposes. How are you, Sterling?
Good. Hello. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I'm really excited because in the history of A Star, this is my first female guest, and I'm really excited to just dive into kind of like your career and what you're all about.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Awesome. So, just to start off, I was wondering, when growing up, when was the first time you remember music entering your life? And, like, when did you know that it was going to be such a prominent part of it?
So I started taking piano lessons when I was 5 years old. And it was in elementary school that it became pretty obvious that I was like gifted at it. So I knew then that music was always going to be a part of my life. And since then, I've like in junior high and high school, I did trumpet, French horn, saxophone. After high school, I learned how to play the guitar.
Dang.
So it's always been a part. Even when I've moved away from it and started my company, I was still doing a lot of work with like musicians and artists and
Right.
rappers. So I've kind of always stayed in that music lane.
I love it. It's crazy how many instruments you've played, but I'm guessing that did learning multiple shaped you into the person that you are today. So when did you start making music full time?
Um, I started writing songs in like late junior high, early high school. I didn't really like put them out there at all. I didn't think I was that good of a musician, so I never sang in front of people unless
Just
I was
kind of
like,
playing around with it.
yeah. And then I started playing when I was at like drunk college parties. I'd whip out a guitar and play for everybody, and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you're so good!" So I started a band originally with Sarah Postel, actually.
Shout out Sarah.
We started a band called Lady Spade, and then we added in Zach Hagen on acoustic drums. And from there, we actually ended up having a 5-piece band at one point and doing a bunch of shows.
Wow.
And then it flattened out into just me and Zach for about a year or two until I moved to Minneapolis in 2018, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when Zach and I were doing, we put out an album, and that's when I really started doing music full time.
Wow. So your first album, when was that? What year was that?
Oh, let's see. I think that was 2017 when Thank You for Your Patience came out. That was with Lady Spade. And then I actually moved to Minneapolis, was there for 2 to 3 years, and didn't start doing music again as a solo career until last year when COVID hit.
Oh, wow. I guess it really was a good turning point to start a solo career because you weren't able to have those gatherings with your bands. But yeah, I really also admire the fact that like once you started to get the feedback, then that's when you were like, oh, I am good at this. Maybe we can keep going. Question, what is a strategy that you found like insanely effective to keep your creative flow going?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I guess for me, when I'm writing music, I write based off of like what's happening in my life. So I do have to have interesting things happening in my life. Like the last couple of months, I've been doing a lot of administrative work with my manager, and it kind of cramped my creative vibe because I'm like,
Right.
how do I write a song about that? But generally, I write about what's going on in my life. So don't fuck me over. I will Taylor Swift you and write a song about it.
Yes. Yes, please.
So just having interesting things going on in my life and being able to tell my story through my emotions and through my music is
Awesome. I love the vulnerability. I saw on your website that your like main focus is like honesty and really telling that true story. And I've even seen that through like following you on Instagram for the past few months, like just being super vulnerable about what you've been through. And I really admire that and think that's the best way to be creative because you can't be fake about it. You have to really dive into those true emotions.
well, and I think it's important too. I think the music industry has lost a little bit of that where it's pop music is so shallow. It's just this kind of and it's catchy and vibey, but it's so shallow. And I think it's important to have that depth and communication and
Yes.
speak to people because there are people who are going through similar situations who can really vibe with what you're saying and
Literally.
learn from what you're saying and connect with you.
And even if if there's some people who maybe don't connect with you, like you're making the music for the ones who do connect with you. And that's what's special, like having your ideal audience who are like your number one fans. Yeah, so that's beautiful. And also you make music at the studio. You also work there part-time as an audio engineer when you're not making music. So how has that shaped you as an artist?
I will say it's given me a lot of growth. Before I moved back from Minneapolis, I was hanging out a lot down here at the studio. And the motto down at the studio is where thoughts become things. And just being around that creative energy was like a big push for me to come home in the first place, to move back here. And then Cal offered me a job at the studio and I started working there. And just being in that creative space and having that creativity around me has really pushed me to grow into more of a creative person, as well as like being able to see other people's creative energy and how they're doing things. I'm like, oh, that's like, I should try that. I see what they're doing there. So you learn things, you grow, and being in a creative space really allows you to like have the space to be creative.
I totally agree with you. And I love the motto, thoughts become things. It really pushes you to make sure your thoughts are clear and your intentions are focused on what you want to do so that you're able to move forward authentically and to the right place. Yeah. So maybe what was one time you were kind of moved outside of your comfort zone at work or in the studio, and how are you able to overcome these obstacles? I'll give you an example first so you don't have to go right away. But one of our podcast episodes, we're just getting started with the podcast, but we rent these cameras actually that we use. We're really fortunate to have Hawkeye Community College lend these to us for the podcast. And one time we left an SD card in the camera when we returned it. And we were supposed to have the podcast on Sunday, like we were supposed to release it on a Sunday. And we had to move it back a few days. And I was freaking out. And I didn't think that I was able to like be authentic to my audience because I already promised them it would be on Sunday. But it was actually a learning experience for me to be easier on myself and not really take some of those things so seriously, because my audience wants a good product anyway, so they're not going to fret if I'm behind a couple of days because I'm still focused on them. So that's kind of how I broke through. How about you?
I think the best way for me to grow and to be productive, I find, is actually when I'm held back by other people. Like there was an instance where I had said I was going to release a song on a certain date, and the person who was mix and mastering it didn't get it back to me in time, and I had to like put out an announcement saying like I wasn't actually releasing the song. And I was worried that it was really going to mess with the engagement because I'd been promoting it for so long, and it was just, it was a bad situation. But in instances like that is when, after that, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to learn how to mix and master so I don't ever have to deal with that problem again. And that's kind of been the progression of everything within my artistry and creativity of like, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to engineer so I don't have to schedule with somebody and deal with doing all that. Like I'll just engineer myself. I'm going to learn how to make beats so I don't have to deal with producers. And, so I keep trying to continue to learn all these different things so I don't have to run into those problems.
No, totally. Because sometimes working with others can be like you have to jump through the hoops of them. So really learning those skills independently is like securing your spot in the game almost, which is super necessary. And like obviously having people to work with is amazing too, because co-creation is so prominent, and like we wouldn't be having this conversation and be growing if we didn't have each other, right? So we still are learning through co-creation, but on an individual level, it's still good to be secure with your skills and your knowledge. So moving forward a little bit, this is kind of a fun question. Being a female in rap has always kind of been seen as a taboo topic, even though there are like queens emerging in the game right now. So, how do you break through those stereotypes and really bring authenticity to your sound?
For me, it's a little hard. I've been really working hard on searching and finding what my sound is. I find that I don't sound like the typical female rapper.
Yeah.
I have a very like manly type sound,
Sure.
which isn't always receivable. Like even some of the producers I work with are like, no, like that's not the sound. And I'm like, yeah, it might not be, but it's my sound. That's what I sound like.
Yeah.
So staying true to my sound and still taking advice, learning, trying to tweak things a little bit so it is receivable to everybody, but staying true to my very semi-aggressive and manly sound.
Yeah.
I don't want to sell out, as well as one thing I know for sure I've struggled with is I feel like in the female rap game, you have to sell sexiness or you're not going to sell. And that to me has been a huge bothering point. Like, I don't want to be valued for my body and not for what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I have no problem sharing myself and I have no problem with being open about my sexuality.
Yeah.
But that's not my selling point.
Right.
So trying to find the differentiation between how can I still express myself in the way that I want to without giving off the idea that I'm just selling sexiness, because that's not what I want either. So between those two things, that's how I try and break through the stereotypes of
Kind of
female rappers.
So kind of like finding the happy medium between like trying to fit in, but really finding your own sound and not listening to what other people have to say unless you know that you really agree with it. That's lovely. I couldn't have said it better myself, honestly. So I really admire you. I've never rapped or anything, but even like getting on a microphone, it can be a lot of pressure sometimes. So just knowing that you're going in the right direction is really necessary. So outside of music, do you have any other hobbies or interests?
Well, I do like audio engineering and videography and photography. I like to do a lot of creative things. I can't really like work a 9 to 5. That's not my gig.
For sure. No, seriously.
Other than that, I have 2 kiddos, so I spend a lot of time with them. And I'm in school. I'm back in school getting a degree in business marketing. So yet again, another thing I'm teaching myself, like, I don't know how to market myself, but I'll learn.
Yeah. It's super necessary to be able to teach yourself, especially in like a pandemic era that we're in right now, because it's like, well, you don't know if you're going to be able to go to class or what's going to happen. So having those resources, whether it be online or even just opening a book and diving deep into what you do want to learn, is super cool.
Other than that, I would say hobby-wise, I'm on a pool league on Tuesday nights. I'm kind of a pool shark.
Oh my gosh. Hidden talent.
Yep.
Sterling's just a pool babe. Cool. Well, I just got to say your confidence is contagious, and I'm super happy that I got to sit down with you today. Do you have any advice for pushing through like insecurities and getting back on your horse?
I would say compassion for yourself and compassion for the situation. I think it's important to understand that we're all human and we all feel different types of ways. Like even I've felt that way. Like I followed a bunch of pole dancers and gymnasts on Instagram.
Right.
And I ended up having to unfollow a bunch of them because I was like, God, I'm not that fit and I'm not that sexy. Like, So definitely maintaining the amount of pressure that you put on yourself about it, I think is important. Like I just unfollowed those people and was like, nah, I'm a bad bitch.
Exactly. Like you don't need to watch those people or compare yourself, because you are unique and beautiful the way you are. So thank you. It was beautifully said, everything you put on the table today. So is there any like shameless plug you want to give the audience to find you on either social media or where we can find your music?
I'm streaming on all platforms. Just search Sterling Banks. Otherwise, you can follow me on social media at Sterling Banks Baby.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, you better go follow Sterling. I'm just so happy that she was here today. We dove into a lot about her music and also just what it takes to be a creative person. So make sure you follow her, follow me, and keep on listening because we're bringing you content every single week right here on A Star with Abby Rolling. So thank you so much. We'll see you next time.